Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk, and today we are going back into the Tower of Terror, and this time actually getting into the lobby to start exploring the many details of that spooky entrance. With me to discover and look into the nitty-gritty details of said lobby is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, what up?
I'm excited to check in to the Hollywood Tower Hotel because we have been anticipating these episodes of the lobby for weeks now in this series. But we had to do a lot of things. We had to linger in the garden, on the patio, on the veranda to see all the things that people are missing that are hints at what's to come. But now we're stepping into the lobby, which is the single most expensive room that WDI has ever made to date when it was created. It is extremely detailed, and there's some incredible secrets and history that most people are completely missing in the brief time they're in this lobby. So very excited to dive into that today.
Yeah, I think you kind of nail the fact that, like, there's, for as expensive and as ornate it is, you get like 40 seconds.
Right.
So let's appreciate and elongate our time in there so that you can point out a couple of fun details next time when you're in the Disney parks.
Yeah, we're going to linger in the lobby. That's what we're doing today. So
no loitering, Kate.
So to kick things off, I want to show just some concept art from the lobby. This is actually from the earlier, before they made it into the Hollywood Tower Hotel. This was when they had like the free fall concept in it. But there is some things that we see that are pulled forward from this concept art into the Hollywood Tower Hotel. So I want to make sure I showed this one, especially this fireplace that's on the left-hand side here. This is actually by Ruben Viramontes from 1990 did this work. And it gives me a lot of like Haunted Mansion vibes, Kirk, like very much like Dorothea Redmond kind of feel to this one.
Yeah, it's also interesting over that fireplace you have a coat of arms with a sword and a shield there, and then lots and lots of sconces. There is plenty of plant life and vases, which we'll get to, and ornate chairs and tables.
Yeah, and it's so you can definitely see where some of these ideas came from this concept that they pulled forward, even this kind of like the ornate ceiling and all of those kinds of things, the chandeliers. But for the actual Hollywood Tower Hotel, we do have this one by Brian Jowers. This is for the lobby concept art. And we see there is no fireplace that I see in this one, but they do have the check-in desk, which looks fairly similar, but definitely a different vibe than the previous one. They have this grand, like round settee kind of thing in the middle couch that we never got. But
yeah, we also noticed in the front, which libations are a big part of this lobby. There is a decanter set, which is notable. They put that right in the foreground.
Yeah. So I also love that there's a big chandelier that we didn't end up getting in this particular lobby, but we did see it as we walked in the front door. There was that big giant chandelier on the front porch. And so I wonder if maybe they just moved that concept outside a little bit, but it still exists today.
It loses some of its oriental flair when it moves outside, though, obviously due to the weather and the elements. So its fix is mainly on metal, where
right.
This one has like more of that fringe, which you would find from like Chinese lanterns.
It's got tassels. Anyway, so I do have a few notes from the Imagineering show guide before we step into this room. And it says, every inch of the hotel helps tell the story. From the building's lightning damaged face to the abandoned luggage still sitting at the dust-covered front desk. Everything is precisely as it was on Halloween night in 1939, but shows the considerable wear and tear of the decades that have come and gone. I have the actual storyboards that the Imagineering used to create this attraction. We've talked about storyboarding before. Comes from the films that Disney would make, and they would create the key scenes, the keyframe scenes of animation. We would move from this point of action to this point of action, and it walks you through the story. So what we're going to see here is actually frame 2, because the first scene, we're still in the first scene according to Imagineering, but this is was frame 2 of it because we were outside for the last one. So this is showing a picture of the lobby, relatively close to what we see today, a little bit different configuration for like the stanchions and whatnot. But it says the queue line takes guests through the main lobby of the Hollywood Tower Hotel. This once elegant show place is now in disrepair, deserted since its sudden closing in 1939. All of the normal trappings involved in the day-to-day business of a hotel can be seen. So I love this storyboarding. It's not exactly like the one we have, but it's pretty close.
What I would just say is like maybe the orientation of the items in the room are slightly displaced or maneuvered, but a lot of them are found within the actual lobby that we get.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a second storyboard frame for this room, which is frame 3. And that says, there are letters in the mailboxes, keys in the key slots behind the front desk, a lobby card proclaiming the evening's entertainment in the top of the tower. Aside from the layer of dust and the patina of age, the lobby is just as it was in the last night of the hotel was open over 50 years ago. So this is setting the scene for what they were trying to accomplish for the guests coming into the lobby. This is what they wanted them to feel and see as they walk through it.
Look at that lion vase on the right-hand side.
Oh, yeah.
Man. And it was a sculpt, too. So what we're actually looking at is this, like, yellowish. It was probably going to be some sort of metal, but it was like a lion face that's, like, 3D popping out of a planter that's holding some sort of palm.
And I do have a note from WDI prop designer Ken Gomes, who said part of the challenge of working on the interior of the Tower of Terror was not only creating a time period, but capturing it in a short while after it had been built and frozen in a moment in time as everything vanished. So throughout the lobby, we have little that can be seen and are told through a matter of props and set dressings of what people were doing in that moment. They do also note that there are props that reference specific episodes of the Twilight Zone, which we are going to talk about quite a few of those as we walk through this lobby. But Michael Sprout said, we have salted throughout the attraction very subtle references, and sometimes not so subtle references to the episodes of the Twilight Zone TV series. We acknowledge the immense debt we owe Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone and the people who created it for providing us this wonderful mood and this wonderful story. We wanted to pay homage to that. I think after repeated viewings of the attraction, you may start to find little mementos of your favorite episodes, so keep your eyes open. And, you know, Kirk, it's interesting as we've gone through this that I think the only ones that I have seen, like the internet at large, find about the Twilight Zone are like the more obvious references. And I love that in this series, we're finding the like really more subtle references to particular episodes that I don't think anybody's ever discussed before.
Dude, you're our resident Twilight Zone episode aficionado, so I'm looking forward to what you pick out as the little tiny idiosyncrasies within this room.
Yeah, so it's going to be really fun to go through that. That being said, are you ready to kind of dive into more of the details of this particular space?
Let's do it.
So the first section we're going to tackle in this lobby is to the left-hand side as you enter into the lobby. What you see on the left-hand side is a Mahjong table with 4 chairs and a cart that has like a tea set on it. So what I see on this tea cart in particular, I want to focus there first there, Kirk, if that's okay with you, is on the tea cart.
Yeah, perfect.
It's kind of in front of the table. We see a vase with dead red roses in it, which this vase, it looks like a little like brass fluted vase that's from, I know this was from 1994 because these photos are from right after the attraction was taken. You can even see the timestamp in this particular photo right after this ride was open. And so this vase was here first, but you'll see it does change over time to this kind of like blue and white crystal vase at some point. And I wasn't able to nail down a date for when it changed, but it did change at some point.
I do like how ornate the particular china is in the porcelain for that. I think that's kind of cool just because it's again, that hand drawing. We're going to talk a little bit more about like hand painted Cantonese, but that style. And remember, we see this is that same time period of Egyptology and the excitement around the Orient and China. So a lot of that influx is coming in, particularly with the wealthy. And I was actually thinking about this. It's kind of an aside, but when you go visit some of the mansions and estates that you see in like northeastern part of America, like they'll put pagodas in their like sitting gardens and whatnot. And that was again from this same exact time period of excitement about the East.
The East, yeah. Definitely. These particular teacups are Royal Doulton China. And I love that on at least one of them, I think you can see it from above. There's like, I don't know if you can see it in this particular one, but there's like a wedge of lemon that's kind of like definitely dried up over time. And you can see the tea stains from where the tea evaporated because it's been sitting there for so long. So it's not just like an empty teacup with nothing in it. There's actually tea that was in it that very clearly just evaporated over time. So part of the storytelling of these people disappearing from this lobby.
Yeah, and that Royal Doulton China Company was established as a English ceramics company in 1815, and by the 1920s, they were producing fine bone china tea sets and dishware favored by the British aristocracy and upper class American, particularly hotels. And these ones have like floral and pastoral scenes in an Art Nouveau style, like rimming with the artistry. So very elegant, very nice.
Yeah, and we see this tea set not just here on this tea cart. It's also, there's at least one more that's in another part of the lobby. So it's clear that they were serving people the tea throughout the lobby on this rolling tea cart. And then I looked at the tea set. This is an Art Deco tea set from somewhere between the 1900s to the 1940s. There's a sugar bowl, a creamer, and a teapot. And I tried to find these for a really long time, Kirk, because I was like, maybe I could find the exact set. And I did find things that were similar, but not the exact same. It's definitely tarnished because it has just been sitting for a long time. But I did find, however, I was watching an episode of the Twilight Zone that was The Passage on the Lady Anne from season 4, episode 17. And lo and behold, I found a tea set that's pretty similar to the one that we see here. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty darn close. The teacups are not the same design. Yeah. But the interesting thing about this particular storyline is this is an episode where people disappear, because I'm going to spoil the episode just a little bit for you because we need to in order to tell this story. But essentially, this is a cruise ship that's on its last sailing, and everybody that is on the ship is all elderly, and they know that the ship is going to disappear. And this is how they want to go. This is how they want to go into the great beyond, is on this ship. But they're alarmed because this like young couple steps onto the ship. They like buy a ticket to get on the ship, and they're like, you're not supposed to be here. And they're like horrified that this couple is here because they know what's going to happen to the ship. And the couple has no idea. Their like marriage is troubled. It's like a whole nother storyline there. But while they're having tea with this elderly couple, the wife of the elderly couple turns to look at them and says, looks like you won't have to die after all, is kind of the gist of what she says, and which alarms the couple, which is a critical moment for the plot of the story. This is ominous. So having tea is ominous for you're not going to make it. This is going to disappear. So this moment with this tea set is a critical plot piece for the Twilight Zone. And I think that is why they included it in this particular setting in the lobby, because they wanted to include the weight of that moment of these people potentially disappearing and inject it into the lobby here. So the moral of the story, kids, if you don't want to disappear, then don't spill the tea. Well said. Well said. I also think, Kirk, I was thinking about it in terms of, the Haunted Mansion we've talked about before, of the idea of things being around the patio and whatnot. And them, it looks like people had just kind of, disappeared suddenly. Like they were enjoying a glass of lemonade and like, where did they go? And now we have it in the new queue in the Disneyland version. There's somebody who was clearly having a mug of something at the table and reading a book, and like, where did he go? And the idea of people just disappearing is a little bit unsettling because you don't know what happened to them. And so
you think could you imagine? Holy cow. I like it. You said that so subtly, dude. I love that. You're like, because like, honestly, if somebody just disappeared, that would be like so unsettling. You know what I mean? Could you imagine that? Yeah. So
Anyway, I think that that's also part of the storytelling in this particular scene with the tea cart. I mean, with this entire lobby of the idea that these people just kind of disappeared in the middle of their game, their task, their whatever they're doing. We'll see that throughout the lobby. So other things we see on this tea cart, we see a towel or a napkin. We see the 2 teacups and saucers, and then there's an extra saucer underneath there. But we also see on the bottom shelf, there is a newspaper. And the newspaper is the same one that we will see everywhere in the Hollywood Tower Hotel, everywhere in this attraction. It's the same one that was published on the day everyone disappeared on 10/31/1939. So this is what it looks like. This is the newspaper itself. This is an actual front page of the Los Angeles Examiner from that Tuesday in 1939. Did you look into this newspaper much, Kirk?
I tried to zoom in on, because we had one photo from the lobby tea cart and it was folded on the bottom.
Yeah.
And it, I can read parts of it. It says gives, days, infamous, but I can't, maybe in something. What does it say? Did you get the whole entire article? I feel like you did.
Oh, yeah. So I'm showing them what the actual page looks like if it was unfolded, and you can read it very clearly. And so, of course, 1939, we've talked about before, is the height of the golden age in Hollywood. It's also in season 2, episode 18, The Odyssey of Flight Number 33, which we'll also see that come back later, another part of this lobby. But the plane actually travels back to 1939 in that episode, and that's partially why they picked that year. But the headlines of the newspaper here, I'm not going to read through all this. This would be an entire episode itself, but these are real things that happened on this date, okay? So 5 more ships sink, war toll on sea hits 103, British losses greatest with 56 vessels sent to bottom. So people disappearing in a way. Perlin calls U.S. policies two-faced. WW Mines found drowned in lake. Pioneer LA Realty man meets tragedy on fishing trip. But this one, Kirk, that's really prominent at the top, we got to talk about this one because it's Ruth Judd gives self up after 6 days, returns to asylum in hysterics. And then it says slept in field, vacant house, never left Phoenix. Winnie Ruth Judd escaped insane trunk murderess, surrendered to authorities in Phoenix, Arizona last night at 7 p.m. Okay, and then it goes into a whole article about it, but I looked into this person, Kirk, and this is a story. So if you don't mind humoring me for a second, we got to talk about the saga of Winnie Ruth Judd.
Let's do it.
So on Friday night of October 16th, 1931, Winnie Ruth went to her friend's apartment for dinner and drinks. An argument broke out among the friends over what is still unclear. Jack Halloran, the man she was having an affair with, maybe money, other women. They're not really sure what happened, but a gun was pulled and all 3 women were shot. Winnie Ruth in her left hand, Agnes Ann Leroy, and Hedvig Sammy Samuelson, both fatally. So this is where it gets dark. So brace yourself, kids, okay? The body of Agnes Ann Leroy was jammed into a large trunk. Hedvig Samuelson's body was too heavy and would not fit. If you're eating something, just maybe pause or mute it for a second. Her body was then dissected, placed into multiple suitcases, and covered by articles of clothing. Judd, with the body-filled trunks, boarded a train headed for Los Angeles. En route, the trunks began to leak and emit a horrible smell. Police greeted Judd at the Los Angeles station and asked her to open the trunks, claiming that her husband had the keys. She fled the scene. The trunks were forced open and the women's dismembered bodies were found. So she was carrying around body pieces in suitcases. That's what you need to know about this. She was pronounced guilty, sentenced to death by hanging. Days before her execution, Winnie Ruth was called back to the courtroom for an insanity hearing. She was found to be insane in 1933. She went to an Arizona State Mental Hospital. She escaped several times throughout the time. She went up for parole a couple of times. Her case was reopened in 1969. A second parole hearing was called. And eventually she got pardoned. So there's that. And she was instructed to never tell her story or talk about any part of it ever again. And she passed away in her sleep October 23rd, 1998 at the age of 93. But the idea here that body parts were transported in a suitcase, and suitcases are everywhere in this lobby, and the newspaper is everywhere in the hotel, it's grim. I'm just going to say.
The one thing I would say about the entire story, is she must have a lot of baggage.
No.
It honestly, I keep thinking about this all the time. When I get really down on the world and everything, I just recognize the fact that all of this has happened before. Like, maybe not the same exact scenarios. And it's like, oh, the world is so terrible. It's always been wild. It's always been crazy. It's like, just how would you get those things communicated to you? And now, obviously, newspaper, radio are the major sources. So could you imagine reading that back then? It's been wild.
On the front page of the paper, and everybody's reading it at the same time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dude, who did she know?
Don't know.
She got out.
She was paroled. She had
It's crazy.
Yeah. And they're just
crazy.
Like, just don't talk about it and we'll let you go free.
So could you imagine if you said that to criminals now? They'd be like, all right.
Sure.
All right. You got it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that is what is on the newspaper that is folded at the bottom of this tea cart, is the story about this insane woman who put bodies in suitcases. And yeah, so that's what
I could never live like that woman. I just don't think I could hack it.
Oh gosh, you got a lot of zingers today.
Going out on a limb. Just all right. Moving on.
Well, before we move on, I just want to take a quick little break to talk about a few things that are going on at Walrus Carp and Disney Cicerone, because we do more than just Distory. Surprise, surprise. We actually have quite a lot going on outside of this podcast. So, Kirk, what are you doing over there at Walrus Carp?
Surprise, 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 surprise. I just think of that meme of that lady. I don't know what that was from, but it's so fun. Anyway, if you head to walruscarp.com, you can find theme park clothes that don't stink, including our polarized sunglasses, our premium wovens, stickers, croc charms, and lots of t-shirts. Oddly enough, I'm wearing a bootleg t-shirt that is the Newfound Glory with Disneyland's Haunted Mansion Hitchhiking Ghosts. Completely illegal, Newfound Glory. Love your music, and thanks for making fun bootleg shirts. But you can find all of ours, theme park ones, for all of your theme park needs at walruscarp.com. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges, 100% happiness guaranteed. Kate, what do you got going on?
Obviously, I've been talking about my latest book, which is A Glimmer of Pixie Dust, Finding Our Hope in the Disney Story. But something that I did that was really unique with this recently is I took a chapter of this that it focused on some mistakes and failures of the history of Disneyland's Frontierland, and actually turned the chapter into a long-form YouTube video. So it's not exactly the same. I added a little bit more and whatnot, but what's interesting about it is that because it takes a lot of the audio from this chapter of the book, it integrates both these mistakes, but also like what Disney learned from it, and also how we can see Disneyland's Frontierland differently, and as we walk into it through the lens of what the Old West was like, how the pioneers struggled, and some of them almost failed, some of them succeeded, what we can take from that storytelling of Frontierland and apply it to our own lives. So, and I really love this, working on this particular YouTube video, because it incorporates so much historical footage and videos that you really don't see hardly anywhere. A lot of it is extremely rare, of the stagecoaches and the wagons, which I know you like, Kirk. That's always up your alley. But it basically makes this particular chapter of this book come to life. And if you ever wanted to see some of the things I talk about in my book, you can see it on Disney Cicerone's YouTube channel. And also the book you can get over at Amazon.com if you're interested in reading it. So the other thing that I see on this tea cart, Kirk, and this actually made me like question for a little bit, like, what is this? Because at first I thought it might be a tea caddy, like a tea storage box. Yeah. But it's not that. It is actually...
What is that red box?
I found it. It is a Mahjong storage box for a 1925 Chinese ivory Mahjong set. And this is the carrying case for it, which I think is a good place for us to transition, because I have a feeling you want to tell us a little bit more about Mahjong. Is that the case?
I would love to, and you're the one who told us about the case.
Oh!
So let's dive into that case. And the reason why Mahjong has become so popularized is because of this gentleman right here, Joseph P. Babcock, who is an American who ended up publishing in Shanghai the rules of Mahjong. And he simplified it and then branded it for the United States and just called it Mahjong, leading to a fad, particularly in New York, LA, and London, with wealthy women, socialites, hotel guests, occultists, and mystics who embraced its symbolism. So here's actually a copy of the Rules of Mahjong by J.P. Babcock. So because of this, and you can notice on here, I think this is kind of fun, like little storyline. If you look on the bottom right of this rule book, it says Parker Brothers, which we all know the Parker Brothers, who made all of Monopoly and all these other amazing games and board games. So Babcock got involved with those guys when he wrote this in 1920, but in 1923, Parker Brothers started republishing it. And it goes in and talks at length about Mahjong. I like the beginning intro. Mahjong is the accepted form throughout the world of the ancient Chinese game as introduced into America by Mr. J.P. Babcock, who originated the name Mahjong, adapted all the best ancient Chinese forms of play for his copyrighted rules, and added the Arabic numerals to the tiles. So like adding numbers, because originally it was just like symbology on here. So there are lots of rules to this. A hand, you know what? I'm not going to read it. Honestly, his rules are crazy pants, and the entire game is actually quite complex. So I'm going to simplify this for you because there's a lot going on, and there's actually lots of different styles that you can play, or different gameplay rules. So it just depends on what you want to do. But most of the time, and what we see here in the context of the Tower of Terror, is a 4-player game, which is a combination, which I think every single good game has, some level of skill / strategy and luck. If it's too much luck, nobody wants to play it. Like, have you ever played Candyland?
Yeah.
That's just a luck game. There's no strategy. There's no skill. So like I get frustrated. I don't like it. And then there's a game like Sorry, where there's strategy on how you play your certain pieces, but there is still luck on what pieces and when you get. So like that's a replayable game that has a mixture of strategy and a mixture of chance. But anyway, how do we play Mahjong? So Mahjong has 144 rectangular tiles made of, in this case, we know it's that ivory, but they can be made of bone or bamboo as well. The characters are bamboo, circles, winds, and dragons. When you're playing this game, there are winning hands that you're trying to play against. They are a pung, which a pung is a 3 of a kind, a chow, which is a sequential run. If you know poker, that would be like a straight, a kong, which is 4 of a kind, and pairs, which are just doubles. So winds, dragons, and flower tiles can be added to complexity and luck-based scoring. So for example, if you had a chow of dragons, that would be worth more than a chow of winds. So it just depends on how you would set up the game. But you would play with all these tiles face down. You would be dealt 13 tiles to start, and you're basically trying to make the best hands. And so once you complete these multiples of sets, you have to expose your winning hand. So
we see this sitting on the table here in the corner of the lobby is a Mahjong game that's currently being played. Now, it's interesting, Kirk, because I heard from our good friend Joshua Harris, who is the creator of E82, the Epcot Legacy. He's been helping us out with this series because he's very knowledgeable about the Hollywood Tower Hotel from having been a bellhop there. But he knows also, he's a historian, and he knows a lot about the history of the tower. And so he said that the story is that the president of Walt Disney World had 4 world champion Mahjong players come and like play the game and then stopped them mid-game. And that's how it was originally set. So the picture I'm showing here, which obviously doesn't have all of the cobwebs on it yet, this is how they originally set this game to look like this. Now, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of discussion online of players of Rishi Mahjong don't recognize the current game that is there. They're claiming that maybe random people set it up. They didn't know how to play. They only had a casual understanding of the game. It doesn't, and like, I'm like, that doesn't jive with Imagineering's like level of detail that they would just randomly set up these pieces for this Mahjong table.
It's like the stalemate in the chess setup by Mark Davis in Pirates. Like, how would that make sense?
Right. Exactly. So I was like, okay, well, what happened here? Because obviously they had put in the thought when in 1994 to have this set up correctly. So the interesting thing is, if you look at the pieces throughout time and how they evolved on this table, the pieces actually change, likely because as they did lobby resets and whatnot, it's possible people didn't look at how they were supposed to be set. But I also asked Joshua, I was like, do you have any insight into this? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, people have just stolen the pieces. And so if you look at like this picture is showing, just the designs. I don't know anything about Mahjong besides what Kirk just told me, really. But if you look at the pieces, they don't look the same as they did back when this first opened. The pieces have actually changed their setting, and that's because there's just less of them. So I feel like here, if you see in this picture, there's just like less pieces in general. It's just people stole them, whether it was cast members or maintenance or whoever stole it. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just saying they've disappeared and they can't replace them because they're part of this antique 1925 set. So
can I share a hypothesis of the people that stole them?
Sure.
I think it was white women because they were crazy for Mahjong. I found this article that talked about the 1920s, and it was talking about how in China, it was a very masculine-based game, and it was all about gambling culture. So if you notice those like sticks on the side, that was like a measure of like wagering, right? But in this, it was completely rebranded by Babcock to be like a pastime for white women. So it completely aligns with rising consumer culture and stereotypical views of like Asian and being exotic or feminine rather than being straight up masculine gambling culture that appeared then, which I think is kind of crazy, but that's why it ended up being more popularized with the elite. And this also leads us to, this isn't shown here, but I have to say it because when you go to a hotel, right, what's the one thing you typically have in your closet outside of a safe, a ironing board, and iron? What like garment would be hanging?
What garment would be hanging? A robe?
Mm-hmm. A robe. And this is one of the times where like in the 20s in LA, particularly, the elite white women would wear silk robes or pajamas to appear like they were more from the East. And those robes end up start leading towards, I'm telling you, this article talks about like how, I'm sorry, ladies, the white women are the problem here. But I don't know whether or not like some of these robes and styles of robes and silk robes in hotels, because these parties would happen in hotels. And is that when like kimono/robe culture becomes a thing and a staple in hotels? ... I don't know. But
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Societal pivots in the 1920s.
So now we know who stole the tiles. It's clearly white women.
It was white women.
I promise I did not take any. I know that much. So.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so anyway, that is a little tour of the Mahjong table, and you can see how it's changed over time, mostly because the pieces just started disappearing. So the table itself is a 1925 pedestal for banquet table, and then the octagonal top was actually done by WDI. So you'll see this a lot in this particular lobby. There's a lot of things that are actual antiques, and then there's things that are WDI created pieces of it to make it fit, if that makes sense. So it's a blend of the old and the new, and that's what we're seeing here as well. There's also this lamp that is sitting on top of the table, which is a crescent-shaped lamp. It has kind of like fringe on it. This is a 1930 carved Chinese soapstone lamp. So it's an actual antique. And the shades are actually made from a 1920s flapper dress. So if you think of like the flapper dresses and they had all like the fringe on it. So when they would shimmy and do the Charleston and all those kinds of things, I think shimmy was later. I think that was the 60s. But anyway, when they would dance, like all the fringe would jump around and whatnot. It was a big part of, the Prohibition era and whatnot. But that's what they used. The fringe of this is actually from flapper dresses, which I think is really fun. The other thing we have to talk about before we leave this area is these chairs, because these are, I would argue, the most expensive, most valuable, oldest things in this lobby are this set of chairs. It's actually, these are 4 chairs of a set of 6. There's 2 at the other table that's like the couples table, which we'll talk about later. But this is, these are from the 17th century and they're Portuguese Renaissance chairs. So these are like legit chairs, Kirk. I looked these up and each chair is worth roughly $9,000 today. And the whole set then is $54,000 altogether is what these chairs are worth.
Why did they pay so much for chairs that look just old?
I want to know who approved a $54,000 budget. It was probably cheaper back in 1994, but still, it can't be that much cheaper because they're 400 years old. And so I did hear from Joshua, he said that this is like the only thing in the lobby that if like guests, duck under the rope or something and they had to try to sit on one of these chairs, they're actually allowed to like yell at the guests to get them to stop because they're so valuable that they like, you can't have anybody sit on them ever because it could break them. And obviously $9,000, you don't want that happening. So these chairs are actually in museums. So they can be found, similar sets can be found in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, so the Met, and at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. So they actually have sets of these chairs as well, which I think is crazy. That is in this theme park attraction in Florida. And then it's at the Met and the Victoria and Albert Museum.
I get how they're there. I still don't, that's like the one piece that makes no sense because buying them outright, unless they got them at an auction, garage sale, antiquing for like a steal that somebody didn't know what they had or was an estate sale, I don't get it. It's such a,
somebody had a vision. So, I mean, I understand it in terms of like, the story
would never happen today.
Well, yeah, no, it would never happen today. No, I get it for the storytelling of, the attraction that this is this opulent elite hotel for Hollywood's elite, that everything would be authentic and antique. But I'm also like, you could also just like reproduce the chairs for way less. Even if you paid somebody, commission them to be reproduced would be way less.
Yeah. Exactly.
But they didn't do that. For most of this lobby, a lot of these things are genuine antiques. And so I guess they decided to stay with that theme and have these chairs, which actually I'm not sorry about. They're really fascinating. So if you're listening to this and not watching, it's kind of like, I want to say it's like leather that's maybe been like worked with these intricate designs on both the back and the bottom of the chair. And then it has like scroll work, woodwork around the bottom, some little ornate ornamentals at the top. And I mean, they're not like, they're fancy chairs, but they're not like the world's fanciest chairs, So I don't know.
The world's fanciest chairs.
But yeah, they're very expensive. So don't ever sit in these chairs. Not that you guys would ever duck under the rope and try to do so, but they're very expensive. So let's protect them.
Yeah, they're very old.
I think they're
very
older
old.
than America. So
you need to make expensive chair talk. I feel like that has to happen.
Also, look at this particular picture I'm showing. Do you see how few Mahjong tiles there are? Like how many have disappeared? Yeah. There's just like a couple.
People are stealing them.
Those white women be stealing.
That's.
So before we move on from this Mahjong table, I think there's something in this area that we haven't quite talked about yet, and that is all of these cobwebs that are covering virtually everything. And now, Kirk, I know that you had a little bit about this. Do you want to share how they do these cobwebs?
I'm a huge fan of this because, Disney's kind of fun when it comes to cobweb talk. So obviously it makes no sense to have actual spiders in here, although that would be wild.
Gross.
But
I would not
instead, we've talked about this in the Haunted Mansion, and for the low price of $49.95, you yourself can make your very own web-casted cobwebs. So this seems so simple. It's a hot glue gun that you attach to an air compressor. So they force it under pressure, and it just shoots out strands and strands of hot glue that's stringy, and it catches. And then over time, it'll start to grab natural dust, obviously shedding of skin that happens in there. I always say this in the Haunted Mansion, and it creeps people out, is that if you look on the walls where there is lots of cobwebs and they're really dusty, I go, that's all humans. Because it is. It's so gross, but there it is. Oh, that's so authentic. Mm-hmm. Here's another fun fact about fake webs. If you got a second.
Yeah.
Do you know that in Toy Story 4, there's the antique where the doll is sold, the evil doll. What's her name? Bonnie or something? No, it's not Bonnie.
No, Bonnie's the cute little kid.
What's the name of the girl? What's the name of the evil doll? Hang on. Evil doll, Toy Story 4. Her name, Gabby.
Gabby.
So in that antique store where Gabby is found, there's all of these cobwebs up on the top part. But instead of individually animating them, Pixar decided to create AI spiders to weave the webs in those scenes.
Oh my gosh.
They are made artificially by artificial intelligent spiders. No joke. They didn't do them by hand. They created code to make spiders, and those spiders make webs. So Disney, big fan of artificial cobweb making.
Yeah, and you can see through some of these pictures, how it definitely does change. They have to refresh it every once in a while. Obviously, this is no cobwebs in this particular one. But you'll see even with the tea cart, it has ones. Let me see here. You can see it changes as well. The style of the webs, how much webbing there is. They clearly refresh this every so often, probably because they need to, I'm guessing.
What's fragile, right? Cobwebs are one of the actually strongest structures, right? Those individual strands, they use them to make armor out of cobwebs. That's weird too. They make spider armor. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's insane.
What is
Google that? That'll another rabbit trail, another time. But they literally have spiders making fabric, and that fabric is extremely strong and durable and lightweight. But yeah, they definitely refresh these over time because it's just thin plastic. You know how fragile a hot glue, when you glue things together with hot glue, I'm it's only a matter of time before this is coming apart.
Right. Right.
So
it's true.
Same thing with these strands. It's definitely not permanent.
Yeah. So something else we see around the room here before we move on in the lobby is all of these Chinese porcelain pots, and a lot of them have, potted palms that are sitting in them. The palm trees are potted in 16th century French reproductions of Ming Dynasty vases. We do see these vases in the original concept art for this attraction. Even before it was the Hollywood Tower Hotel, we saw palms in vases in this concept art was everywhere there. So what?
I know you're saying palms in vases, but I'm hearing, yo, we saw palms in faces, bro. I'm all about palms and vases.
So, Kirk, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the palms?
I would love to, dude. First of all, let's talk about porcelain and how porcelain is made, because it's just fun. Why not, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So porcelain requires taking kaolin, which is a type of clay. It's the primary ingredient, and it's very fine in texture and its purity. And it also uses things like feldspar and silica, which help provide structure and a little bit of translucency. And so they basically take all these raw materials together, they mix them, crush them, grind them, mix them, create a slip, which is a liquid paste or a dough into this desired consistency. Then it allows them to shape, firm, mold, and then they will fire in a bisque, and then they will glaze these. We're not eating here. We're not making soup bisques, and we're not glazing cinnamon buns. This is what
almost
this is.
Lunchtime.
This is my job. So yes, that's how you make these vases. Now, this is immediately as soon as you walk into the entrance of the lobby. It's on the left-hand side. This one does not have a plant in it. However, there is one that's on right next to the tea chest. You can see a little bit of its branches here on the right-hand side. And this is the one we're going to actually talk about because I found out a decent amount of information on this Canton porcelain fishbowl style planter. So these planters originally, this Ming Dynasty that Kate was talking about, came from the Canton region of China, or Guangzhou. And it was a major hub for exporting porcelain, which we just talked about. Most of them were done in hand-painted scenes of regular, normal Chinese village life. Could be pagodas, scholars, gardens, or it could be sometimes mythological or religious types of imageries. And you see this on, particularly in the 1920s, things that were imported into the States were decorative planters, umbrella stands, and parlor centerpieces. Because again, there was this obsession of Oriental or Chinese heritage was particularly well established. Now, this one, which is really cool, when you zoom in, shows a hunt, and I think it's a fox hunt. And you can see two men on horseback, and there are dogs, and the dogs are chasing something, and you can't see what they're chasing on this vase because it's on the backside. However, if you are astute enough, you can go on a wonderful historical website that sometimes I will find imagery on. It's called Etsy. And if you go on Etsy, they have a large Chinese bowl lantern with European hunting scenes, Chinese flower pot, Chinese fish bowl, hand-painted porcelain, aka SEO stuffed title, for $828.75. There are only two of these left, and guess what? It's identical to the one that we find in the Tower of Terror. So this is exactly the same scene with the exact same dogs that are hunting around. We don't ever see the fox, though, but we do get to see these characters up close with those, I don't know what kind of hunting hounds they are, because they're spotted, and they have longer, like, ears, but they kind of give me, like, beagle vibes, but they're definitely not them because of their spotting pattern. There's some are white and black, and some are like a liver or cream or tan and black.
I like that pink horse.
Yeah, I mean, that's normal too. They got that. It's also got a Friar Tuck haircut, if that's important. But you know what's cool is that on the inside, Kate, you never got to see the inside because it's stuffed with a palm tree, and it has goldfish in it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like, I thought it was going to be like koi-ish, but they are not. They're not koi. They're definitely goldfish based on the way the scalings are. I mean, I guess the way the elongated tails are, they could be just goldfish body, tail back end.
They kind of remind me of beta fish, you know?
Like a beta fish back. That's what I actually meant.
Yeah.
I meant a beta fish. So yeah, there you go. There is our, you can buy one of, if you want to have the Tower of Terror in your own home, you just have to head to the historical auction site known as Etsy. But now, we are not done with this palm tree. No. We have to talk about that plant inside of it. As your resident plant expert, looking at all things plants-like in material and nature,
I love this that you are that.
It's ridiculous. We all have our strengths, right? So this is a parlor palm. Isn't that fun?
What?
This is literally called a parlor palm. It is from southern Mexico or Guatemala. They were very popular in the 1800s through the 1930s as an indoor plant. They have feather-like fronds, thin cane-like stems, and they were very compact in size, particularly for indoor urns, which is what we saw on the outside. You could also call the vase or potted plant that it's sitting on right now, that is also a urn. But yeah, it's and now the one thing I couldn't figure out is if they artificially aged these. Are they real? Are they not real? I'm guessing that they're not real, but I don't know. Do you have any information on if these are real or not?
I
guessing they're
really
I think
don't
they're
think.
Plastech.
Plastic.
Plastech. Because if you look at this one side, it looks fake.
It doesn't look real. No. And
Yeah.
the dirt doesn't even look real. So I'm gonna hazard a guess and say fake because they also don't change.
You're gonna put your reputation on the line over a parlor palm?
I mean, it's just it's speculation, but probably
I like it.
not
It's
real.
good speculation.
Yeah.
It's good speculation. So yeah.
Also, Joshua popped into our chat and said that the cobwebs are stripped and replaced roughly every 3 years. So thanks, Joshua.
So I wonder how challenging it is to strip those cobwebs because, again, the fragility nature of that structure is just, I could imagine that being there must be like a seamless way, like a glove or something that like has a texture that can like swipe them easily.
My cobweb glove.
Could you imagine like pulling? Like, it would be the worst. Oh, Disney College Program. Good to see ya. Come on in. Got a job for you.
You guys are going to remove all the cobwebs. That's
You're going to
your job
love
today.
this. How much do you love spiders and plastic?
Well, as much as I would love to move on to the concierge table, the reality is that area of the lobby is incredibly intricate with so much to talk about, and we don't want to rush through it. So we are going to pause there for this episode. And on our next episode, we are probably just going to talk about the concierge table area and all the things that you see there, there's a lot. So it's going to be a great one. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up the Mahjong table?
Dude, you set me up for like a way different joke. I don't. I got to move forward. Because all of them were horrible and inappropriate. I don't need this in my life.
We need to talk about white women stealing things.
Nope. No. No.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you really enjoyed learning just a few of the many, many secrets and stories that are found inside this lobby. And remember, if you have to dismember someone and put them in a suitcase, make sure it's watertight.
I would like this episode to also know that I know Kate, but I am not in conjunction with her. I've never planned anything with her, and I live on a completely different coast.
Maybe just don't dismember people. I think that's good advice.
Remember, don't dismember.
On that note, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, for being with us, and we'll see you next time for more Distory.